but not yet mastered the ability to miniaturize its warheads or deliver it via a missile. And media reports habitually declare that it's still several years away for North Korea to have the ability to hit the United States with a missile. And then based on this very benign conclusion, policymakers in both the United States and South Korea presume that our countries still have several years to diplomatically constrain North Korea's nuclear program, timidly pursue incremental sanctions, and defer military defenses. But this analytic construct is flawed because available information indicates that North Korea has likely already achieved warhead miniaturization, the ability to place nuclear weapons on its no-dong medium-range missiles, and a preliminary ability to reach the continental United States with a missile. And based on a number of factors, which I included in a research paper I recently published, I believe the no-dong missile is already nuclear capable and can directly threaten Japan and South Korea. And just recently, we saw General Scaparrotti, the senior U.S. commander on the Korean Peninsula, declare his assessment that North Korea now has the ability to produce a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can be mounted atop a ballistic missile and has a functioning long-range mobile missile launcher. And then also recently, we saw a Saenuri National Assembly member reveal that some of the recent North Korean missile tests of the no-dong missile flew at a higher trajectory in order to shorten their range and therefore threaten South Korea. Now, Pyongyang has made indisputably clear that it will not negotiate away its nuclear arsenal. The National Defense Commission said, "Nothing could be more foolish than trying to force the army and people of the DPRK to lay down the treasured sword of nuclear weapons." And the Korean Workers' Party Central Committee declared last year, "The nuclear weapons of Songun Korea are not goods for getting US dollars, and they are not a political bargaining chip." And of course, North Korea altered its constitution to assert itself as a nuclear state. And Kim Jong-un has shown that he is not the reformer that some had speculated that he would be. There's no evidence that he or any hidden faction advocates implementing economic or political reform or moderating North Korea's threatening behavior. Pyongyang even denounced foreign speculation of reform as the height of ignorance. To expect policy change and reform and opening from the DPRK is nothing but a foolish and silly dream. There cannot be any slightest change in all policies. Now, how do we deal with North Korea's WMD problem? The Obama administration tried repeatedly to engage North Korea, including with the Leap Day Agreement of 2012, only to have Pyongyang rebuff the open hand of dialogue. And Washington believes that Pyongyang's actions and declarations show the regime is unwilling to abide by its previous commitments, and therefore the six-party talks have no utility without significant policy change by Pyongyang. As a result, the Obama administration is willing to have President Park Geun-hye take the lead in reaching out to North Korea. There is a widespread misperception that North Korea is the most heavily sanctioned country in the world. That is simply not true. Let me repeat that. That is simply not true. The US, EU, and UN have imposed far more pervasive and compelling measures against Iran, even though it was Pyongyang, not Tehran, that has withdrawn from the NPT, tested nuclear weapons, and repeatedly threatened nuclear attacks against the United States and its allies. Washington has targeted a mere 62 North Korean entities, primarily for illicit activities and weapons of mass destruction. By comparison, the U.S. has imposed targeted financial measures against other countries with far greater severity. We have targeted 231 entities of the Balkans, Burma, 164, Cuba, 397, Iran, several hundred, and Zimbabwe, 161. Think of that. We have almost 3 times as many Zimbabwe entities on our sanctions list or our targeted financial measures list as we do against North Korea. And the U.S. has targeted Zimbabwe, Congo, and Burma for human rights violations, yet has still not taken any action against North Korea 9 months after the release of the UN Commission of Inquiry report, which accused Pyongyang of having human rights violations so systemic and widespread that they constitute crimes against humanity. And nor has Washington designated North Korea as a primary money laundering concern, as we did with Iran and Burma, and the list goes on and on. Just as strong measures induced Iran back to the negotiating table, more robust measures are needed to leverage North Korea. Now, to make clear that these punitive measures or these targeted financial measures would be used in conjunction with other instruments of national power, including conditional diplomacy. Now, instead, the Obama administration continues to pull its punches by only incrementally increasing punishments on Pyongyang for its repeated defiance of the international community. The Obama administration has chosen not to fully implement existing U.S. law and has also shown resistance to additional legislation proposed by Congress. Now, what should the U.S. do? First, support South Korea taking the lead. The Obama administration feels there's little incentive to re-engage North Korea, given the failure of its previous attempts at engaging Pyongyang. So the U.S. should encourage South Korean attempts at engagement with conditional outreach combined with strong defenses against the spectrum of North Korean military threats. Second, increase pressure on Pyongyang. The time for incremental responses and relying on the UN is past. The U.S. should take action against North Korea's illegal activities, its nuclear and missile programs, and any complicit foreign individual bank, business, or government entity. Third, press China to pressure Pyongyang. Beijing should be told that its reticence to join international pressure on North Korea is triggering the crisis that China seeks to avoid. Pyongyang has only been emboldened to ratchet up tensions on the peninsula still further, and that has pushed Washington and its allies to take necessary military responses that Beijing does not want. Fourth, fully fund U.S. defense requirements. It's unrealistic to think that the U.S. can cut defense spending by $1 trillion over the next decade and still maintain the current level of commitment and deterrence. And fifth, encourage South Korea to improve relations with Japan. Washington should privately counsel, as it has already been doing so, both Seoul and Tokyo to take steps to begin a reconciliation process by compartmentalizing and prioritizing contentious issues to enable forward-looking security policies. During the past year, Washington has become frustrated with both Japan and South Korea for allowing the history issue to detract from the real security threats. Now, what should Seoul do? First, enhance South Korean defenses. Despite the clear and present danger from North Korean missiles, Seoul, counterintuitively, insists on implementing an independent and less capable missile defense system to protect its citizens against the North Korean nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. South Korea continues to resist both purchasing more capable interceptors and integrating its system into the comprehensive Allied system with linked sensors, which would improve Allied defense capabilities against North Korean ballistic missiles. Secondly, Seoul should continue to pursue conditional engagement with North Korea based on the principles of conditionality, reciprocity, and transparency. That includes not removing the May 24th post-Cheonan sanctions and warning North Korea that its next provocation or attack will lead Seoul to abandon its participation in the Kaesong Special Economic Zone. Because let's be clear, Kaesong is not economically viable, it's failed in its original political objectives, and it may well violate paragraphs 11, 14, and 15 of UN Security Council Resolution 2094. And third, denounce North Korean human rights abuses, and that includes approving, finally, a North Korean Human Rights Act, and Seoul should also call on Beijing to abandon repatriating North Korean defectors and encourage China, Mongolia, and Southeast Asian nations to facilitate travel by North Korean refugees. In conclusion, President Park Geun-hye has provided a realistic blueprint for engaging North Korea while still protecting South Korea. And Seoul should remain resolute in the requirements of conditionality, reciprocity, and transparency from Pyongyang. The U.S. and South Korea should have no illusions about Kim Jong-un. The North Korean threat, always high, has gotten worse under the young leader. He's just as dangerous as his father and less predictable. So finally, there can be debate as to how best to respond to the situation, but there should be no debate as to how dangerous this situation has become and could become. Kamsahamnida.